Okay, we are live. Hi, this is William Ramsey. Welcome to William Ramsey Investigates. On today's show, I have a very special guest. He comes to us from Canada. I've had him on my show 4 times, so this will be the 5th time. His name is Terry Wolfe, and last name is spelled with an E, Wolfe. And he's just published a book. It kind of came to my attention recently, so I reached out to him and he responded. So I'm glad to have him back. If you're watching this on X, Rockfin, or Rumble, you'll see the title. Full title is the Biblical Prophecy Study Premium Handbook. And the title of this handbook is Rise of the Beast, the Four Kingdoms Explained in 21 Lessons for the Common Believer. And you can find it on Amazon. I just bought a copy myself and reacquainted myself with some of the stuff by Daniel and the book of Revelation. And so, like I said, this is going to be our 5th show. We've done 4 other shows. I'll try to put links to them in the show notes, but you can find them in my catalog. If you find it, you can look up Wolfe on Podcast Addict or something like that. One is The Paradox of Fundamentalism, God's Fault, Book 1. We also did Fire in the Rabbit Hole and the Deception in the Truth Movement. And then a 2-parter, Maybe Everyone is Wrong, Revelation's Conspiracy and the Kingdom of Heaven. So we did a part 1 and part 2. But we're going to talk about this book again. The full title is Rise of the Beast, the Four Kingdoms Explained in 21 Lessons for the Common Believer. And the author, again, is Terry Wolfe. So, Terry, welcome back to the show.
Thank you very much. Yeah, no, it's great to be back. And this book, Rise of the Beast, I want to tell everybody up front, if you're interested in the book, it's a very thin booklet. It is designed to be like basically pocket-sized. It is 21 lessons, but each lesson basically spans 2 pages. So you open it up, it's a spread. The lesson is on left page, right page. You turn the page, it's a new lesson, that kind of thing. So it is compact, and it is designed. It is a very cheap, affordable, small booklet. Just to get, my hope was to get people introduced to this concept, to provide all the evidence, but to make it compact. And then if people are interested, I could do many more smaller booklets like this to follow up, because actually the material that I'm getting into here, I was writing a book that was on track to becoming something like 2,000 pages. It was getting completely out of hand. It was a study of everything from the time of the major prophets of Isaiah and Jeremiah and Ezekiel and Daniel to the modern to today. And it was just going through, the Roman Empire, the history of the Vatican and Europe and the Holy Roman Empire, and just everything, the Venetians. And it was just like every conspiracy theory rolled into one. It was getting so completely out of hand. I decided I want to just take a small slice out of that, a starting point, and then put that out as a booklet for people who, you could just digest this. And then I'm still working on that other book in fits and starts, but it's so much to manage. So this is, I think, one of the best ways to sort of get introduced to this fascinating concept of what is the beast. That you hear people talk about it. People are interested in the mark of the beast, especially today, the idea that there's going to be this digital control system. I basically reject that idea that the mark of the beast has anything to do with a technological, finance system that an individual will take. And I make all these arguments in this book that will sort of put it in a different context, because people really don't understand what the beast even is. And then when you talk about the mark of the beast, it only makes sense to understand the beast before you start talking about his mark, right? So that's sort of a little introduction to what the idea of the book is.
But it's important because a lot of people kind of get intimidated by reading the Bible or what to read.
For sure, even Christians.
Yeah, sometimes it's impenetrable. It's hard to understand the connections between Old and New Testament and some of the stuff. So pamphleteering actually, I think, is an important aspect of the culture of Christianity, because it used to be more common to see pamphleteers before the internet and things like that. So right. You get little books, and some are of questionable merit, but still, it's a way for people to get not, feel like they can look at a topic one at a time without, independently of just this big giant treatise or something like that.
Right. And so the book has has some diagrams. I would love to hear more feedback on what people all get out of it, because there's a map. There's just basically, I think it is designed for people who are not familiar at all with this subject. You don't even really have to have a grasp on what Revelation is. You don't have to have read my previous books. So yeah, no, I don't know. It starts with sort of this examination of Daniel, the prophet Daniel, and he had these visions from God where he understands that there's going to be 4 major kingdoms that are going to rule the world, or at least this significant part of the world where Israel and the Jews are, and where all these great empires come out of the Mediterranean area. And yeah, it goes into the explanation of each of the 4 kingdoms, and even the idea of how the Bible sees the world's kingdoms, because it's very different than our modern secular understanding, where you have human leaders with their ideologies that they somebody conquers something and then they rule it. In the biblical worldview, the heavens, God and the heavenly host, are involved in empire building, and nobody gets to rule without basically having some sort of divine mandate. Obviously, in the ancient world, this was common sense. Every ruler and conqueror in the world said, I work for the gods sent me, I am a representative of the gods. And Alexander the Great and all the conquerors would claim to have a divine mandate, and the Bible does not disagree with that. The difference is that the Bible frames the whole thing as being part of God's much larger chess game that he's doing with all the nations for his own messianic plans that revolve around Jesus Christ, whereas these individual pagan societies, they think that their God or gods are the penultimate deities that rule everything. And God, the Bible basically says all those lesser gods are just my servants. They're just my workers that raise up and lower down rulers as I need them to. And with Daniel the prophet, it is perfectly demonstrated, because famously, Jerusalem gets taken into Babylonian captivity, and the prophets of God, the prophets of Israel, are distraught and confused. They don't understand, or the rulers and the people themselves are distraught and confused. And these prophets come by and explain that this is all part of a plan. This is not some random thing. It's not like God is too weak to defend them against these conquerors or anything. And Nebuchadnezzar, who's the one that captures the Babylonians and takes them to Babylon, his story is sort of like a perfect microcosm that I get into in the book of how this ruler was basically given the impetus and the urge and the ability to conquer Jerusalem and take them into captivity because God wanted to punish Israel, not because his God was greater than the God of the Hebrews or anything like that. And
so that was this is the destruction for historical background. This is the destruction of the first temple. Yes. The second temple was destroyed in 70 AD, and now they're talking about the third temple. But this is the first one, the destruction of the temple, and then the
Solomon's temple gets destroyed, which is the most magnificent, temple. And even the people who survived, because it's a 70-year period, so there's people who are young who saw the original temple, got taken into captivity, and then they got released. They go back and they build a second temple. And those people who see the second temple actually are weeping, it says in the Bible, because they remember how great the original one was, and the second one is so pathetic compared to the original and stuff like that. So this is where those 4 major prophets kind of come in relatively quick succession. They're actually overlapping for the most part. Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, and Daniel, they're actually kind of all lumped together historically, close together in the timeline, because they're warning about this time that God is going to transform the whole world by raising up these empires that are going to rule that whole region and basically strip away Israel's sovereignty. So King David is gone, King Solomon is gone. The kingdom has split into the north and south, with the 10 tribes in the north getting already captured by the Assyrians. The south is now Jerusalem, where we think of as being the Holy Land, and nobody really talks about the northern tribes anymore. But yeah, it's already like Israel's kind of in shambles. It's just sort of 10 of the tribes are missing. The Judah, and that's why they're called Jews, is because only basically the tribe of Judah remained. The tribe of Benjamin in the south in Jerusalem. And now even that is getting captured by Babylon. And it's sort of like, this is the last stand. They've got the temple. They've got, they still have kings, but the kings are wicked. And so God punishes them. And what I find interesting about that, that's just the Old Testament, right? But what you might not understand from reading the Old Testament, because Jews don't really, obviously because they reject Jesus, they don't see the timing of this all coinciding with the arrival of the Messiah. They think of it as more of a struggle to gain their own independence, and once they get freed from Babylon, they think that this is like God is done punishing them, so now we're going to build a new temple. No, that's just the beginning of these 4 major kingdoms that are going to rule. And the Bible itself identifies Babylon as being the first one, and Media Persia as being the second. And by the end of the Old Testament, it's very clear that the Greeks are the third. And so then the question is, what about the fourth one? Who is that going to be? And basically all historians and all early church authors knew that was Rome. And in fact, if I can just mention, there's actually like a list of authors, which if you're interested in early church history, you'd probably know these names. Most people wouldn't, but Theophilus, Irenaeus, Hippolytus, Tertullian, Origen, they all said that Rome was the fourth beast of Daniel, which they're living in the Roman Empire. And they're saying it like we are currently living in the time of the fourth beast. It wasn't some sort of big mystery or secret. And so that part should not be controversial. But today, for some reason, people, first of all, they don't really, there's some question about what the fourth kingdom of Daniel was, but then they don't see that that's directly linked to Revelation and the beast of Revelation. So that's what I'm doing in this booklet, and what my much larger book would eventually do a much thorough examination of, is seeing that. And that's where I found it interesting, this clip that I found of Nick Fuentes and Alex Jones talking about America, and saying that America is an extension of the Roman Empire, which is exactly what I argue. But of course, they're not seeing how this fits into this prophecy of the beast that is going to rule and deceive the whole world and commit blasphemy until the return of Christ. They're just saying that we should honor our Roman roots. So if you want to play that, I find it interesting.
All right, let's do it.
The thing that I would disagree on slightly is the terminology of the West. I don't like the terminology of the West because I think it's too broad. I think that when we talk about who we are and what we represent in America and Europe, it's Christendom. That's the thing that historically binds us together. It's the Catholic Church and Christendom broadly. And I also think it's that we're white. We come from the Roman Empire. We come from Greece. We come from this legacy. We also come from the Germanic tribes. We come from that place. And I think that what makes Jews in Israel sort of outside of that is they don't see themselves as European or descendants of the Roman Empire, and they're not Christian, and they're actually hostile to those things. And you see it all the time. People like Ben Shapiro say that Europeans are inherently anti-Semitic. It's in our blood. It's genetic. That's why I'm a little bit skeptical when, now after October 7th, a lot of these Israelis and Jewish people, they want to say, oh, well. Now.
Is that the one?
Yeah. Alex Jones responds after that, and he essentially agrees.
The thing
it is like that argument I've heard so many times, and this is just a very recent example with two controversial, public figures, obviously these really truth tellers, as they label themselves. And it's like, it's just granted that America is like this spiritual successor to the Roman Empire. The British Empire was, and then America is. And it's, of course, Fuentes is a Catholic, and he argues that the Catholic Church is this sort of cornerstone of America, even though it was the Protestant British who defeated the Spanish who were here before, right? So as the Spanish conquered America first in the name of the Pope and the Catholics, America came in as Protestants and kicked out the Spanish and took it over from them. And then it was this Enlightenment, Freemasonic thing, whatever. It's like, it's so clearly not a Catholic country, but he's doing the Catholic thing, which is to try to make it sound like everything, that Christendom is even a thing. This idea of the holy Christian empire that rules the world. As I clearly say in my books, Maybe Everyone is Wrong and Fire in the Rabbit Hole, my argument and the argument of pretty much all Protestants and Anabaptists is like, the Catholic Church does not represent Christianity. And this Christendom idea, the idea of the Crusades and conquering the Holy Land and all of that is a deception. But what deception is it? This is what drives me crazy, is when Christians don't see that the beast from Revelation, the one that it says in Revelation will deceive the whole world and blaspheme. And one of the core qualities of the beast of Revelation is that it is constantly blaspheming. That is the Roman Catholic Church, the one that claims to have this imperial power, this monopoly on Christian doctrine, and this ability to kill in the name of Jesus, to conquer nations, to burn witches, to burn heretics. This is all so completely, laughably the opposite of what Jesus Christ himself was like. And they go on and claim we should honor our Roman roots, and that the Catholic Church is just this like healthy extension of that. So it goes from the Roman Empire to the Catholic Church to America, and they want us to salute that and to honor that. And that is what the literal book of Revelation is trying to warn people not to do.
It is interesting. The persecutors of the early Christians and the Jews were the Romans, right?
Absolutely. I mean, the Romans crucified Jesus.
Right. So they were equal opportunity oppressors, I guess, at that time. I mean,
and so then the question is, what happened with Constantine? What does Constantine represent in history and in prophecy? Because he's the one that decides the Roman Empire needs to become Christian. And how does that square? Because the Catholics see that as being the defeat of the pagan Roman Empire. Augustine, all these big Catholic theologians who the Catholic Church ends up sort of endorsing. So like I said, the early Christians before Constantine said that they were living in the time of the fourth beast kingdom from Daniel, from Babylon, Media, Persia, Greece, and then Rome. So they all understood that. But then when the Visigoths and the Germanic tribes go and destroy the Roman Empire, and the Roman Empire collapses, and Constantine says we need to become Christian. How do they interpret what just happened? Well, they interpret it as being like City of God by Saint Augustine, or Augustine of Hippo, is like the foundational theology for this. He says the Roman Empire was evil. It was pagan. It was this kingdom from Daniel that God warned us about. But now it's finished. Now it's over. We're going to have the kingdom of God now, and it becomes this idea of Christendom. Augustine himself doesn't really make the argument because he doesn't know the future. He doesn't know what the Catholic Church is going to be. But he's basically arguing that the Roman Empire has the opportunity to transform into this kingdom of God. And that's what the Catholic Church does, is it sees itself as being defeating the beast and transforming itself into the kingdom of God. But what Revelation says is that, this is my interpretation, of course, and I make the argument in my books, is that you notice in Revelation, in Revelation 13 specifically, where it's describing this beast, it has a wounded head, as if it was going to die, and then it gets revived by Satan, and it becomes this blaspheming empire that makes war on the saints, and it destroys the saints. And this is part of God's plan to sort of deceive the world and let this beast reign. And people think the beast is the Antichrist. That's what the Catholic Church teaches, and what a lot of early theologians thought. And so, I mean, I don't know if you wanted me to give some snapshots or examples from the booklet.
I do. I want some people who don't know, who was Daniel, what was the revelation, what was the symbol. Some people may not know even kind of the basics of this being with, the fusing of clay and bronze and the symbols that were.
So Daniel, he's one of the royalty from Israel that gets captured when Babylon is taken over by the Babylonians, by Nebuchadnezzar. He gets taken into, he's an educated, royalty of Israel. So he gets treated nicely in Babylon. He gets taken there, and they teach him their language and everything. And he basically becomes part of their intellectual class. But while he's there, he's lamenting that Israel has been taken into captivity. God ends up showing him these visions as he's sort of trying to repent and ask God to restore Israel and stuff like that. In Daniel, he's essentially shown this vision of a massive statue that has a head of gold, a torso of silver, thighs of or a waist of bronze, and then 2 legs of iron. And God explains to him that those are 4 different kingdoms. And it says that the head of gold is Nebuchadnezzar, it's Babylon, and that it's going to be surpassed by another kingdom that is going to be silver. And there's this imagery of 4 successive kingdoms going from the head down to the feet. Then more happens. Daniel, there's famously, he gets, thrown in the lion's den and this type of stuff. Eventually he has another vision, which is also about 4 kingdoms. It's the same prophecy told from sort of a different angle. And this involves 4 beasts that all rise up out of the sea. And they reign on earth. And so I'm not sure which chapter it is. It's probably 7. Yes, Daniel 7.
7, I think, maybe.
Yeah, Daniel 7 talks about this vision that he had, where he sees these 4 great beasts coming up out of the sea. And they have different characteristics and descriptions, again, just like the statue did. And so you can line up each of these kingdoms, the beast and the statue. It's actually the same, describing the same thing from 2 different symbols. And that's what I do in the book too. And many people have done this in the past. It's not like I came up with this idea. But it is necessary to explain if you want to understand this prophecy. And so these beasts, the first one is a lion. The second one is a bear. So that's Media Persia. The third one is a leopard that has 4 wings. And the fourth one is this mysterious monster that does not relate to any specific animal. It seems like an unnatural abomination of a creature. And it has 10 heads and 7 horns. And it's, it says that it's different from all the other beasts. It will devour the whole earth. It will speak words against the Most High. It will make war against the saints. It will, basically everything will be given over to it. It will have dominion over the whole world. And even the kings of the various nations will, submit to it. And, all dominions will serve and obey this fourth kingdom. Well, if you think of the Roman Empire as being that fourth kingdom, that already sounds pretty accurate. But then if you understand that fourth beast, it says, let me just find the exact verse here, that the kingdom, it says that that this fourth beast dominion will be taken away in verse 26, and it will be destroyed. The kingdom and dominion, the greatness of the kingdoms under the whole heaven shall be given to the people of the saints of the Most High. The kingdoms of an everlasting kingdom and dominions shall serve and obey him. It's talking about the arrival of the Messiah that is going to challenge and destroy this Roman Empire. And so it makes sense if Jesus came by under Roman occupation, he gets crucified by the Romans. He talks to Pontius Pilate and explains that his kingdom is not of this world, and that, he could conquer them if he wanted to, but his kingdom is not of this world. They kill him. He rises again. We understand that spiritually his kingdom is in effect. He can cast out demons. He can do miracles. Jesus is demonstrating that he has this power that no other humans have. And so this sort of confusion happens where people think, oh, that's how he fulfilled this Daniel prophecy of the starting up this kingdom. But it's almost like there's a double twist happening here, where the Roman Empire actually goes on to become much more powerful after Jesus. And then when it gets sacked by these Germanic invaders, and Constantine says it should be Christian, well, now that it's truly like the Roman Empire is dead and gone, and spiritually it's transformed, and Jesus has won, and now it's going to go on to become this Christian institution that will spread out and conquer the whole world in the name of Christ. So that's a good thing. That's success. And it might be flawed. It might have some bad apples in it or whatever, but essentially this prophecy from Daniel has succeeded. And so by that logic, the prophecy in Daniel says this kingdom that replaces the beast is going to last forever, and it is going to rule over all humans. So you can see how, from a Catholic point of view, they're thinking that's us. We are going to conquer all the people. We are going to rule forever and ever. This is our world now. Our Pope is the vicar of Christ. He's the representative of Christ on earth. But they don't realize that they are actually fulfilling the Revelation 13 prophecy about this mortally wounded beast that gets miraculously saved by Satan. I can read a little bit of that too.
Yeah, please do.
And there's also a very compelling and convincing argument for identifying the beast of Revelation as being the beast from Daniel, the fourth beast, literally compared to the lion. It has 10 heads and 7 horns, just like the one from Daniel. We could get more into that too, but
right, they're tied together. That's the point. Is
they're symbolically the same.
Right?
Their description is like identical in both of them, and so it only makes sense that the beast from Revelation is not the Antichrist or some singular figure that comes in at the end times. It's warning about how the Roman Empire is going to evolve into this this monstrous, shambling, sort of half-dead creature. And so it says in Revelation 13, I saw a beast with 10 horns and 7 heads rise out of the sea. That's also what Daniel says, the beast rise out of the sea. There were 10 royal crowns on its horns and blasphemous names on its heads. I saw a beast was like a leopard with the feet of a bear, the mouth of a lion. See how these are bear, leopard, lion, just like Daniel, the 4 kingdoms. And the dragon, which we know represents Satan, gave the beast his power and his throne and great authority. And then it says, one of the heads of the beast appeared to have been mortally wounded. This is what Jesus did when he came, and he essentially killed the spiritual authority of this beast, of Rome. He conquered it spiritually and said, you're dead. But it says the mortal wound was healed, and the whole world marveled and followed the beast. They worshiped the dragon, Satan, who had given the beast authority, and they worshiped the beast, saying, who is like the beast? Who can wage war against it? And it says that it was given a mouth to speak arrogant, blasphemous words. There's nothing more blasphemous than the Pope and these murderous imperial Roman generals and conquerors, Constantine, who was a murderer and a traitor, not in the slightest Christian in any way, shape, or form, did not understand Christian theology, just claimed he saw the vision of the cross in the sky, and it said, with this conquer. That was his conversion story. And then he went and chopped off some guy's head and threw his body in the river and, built a monument to himself. And it's like, this is supposedly the Christian emperor that is converting Rome. Like it's
Look at Hernan Cortez, man. When he came to Mexico under the sign of the cross, everybody submitted, or died. Submit or die. It was actually that way throughout Central and South America, really. All over the New World. Like exactly. The Roman Catholic Church really did try to. It had a global ambitions, really.
I mean, North Americans and Americans tend to forget how much of the world is Catholic. You think of the English-speaking world, but if you think of the Latin world, it's 99% of the Latin America is Catholic until a couple of years ago, and but anyway, it goes on and then says that it's authorized. God is authorizing this beast to wage war against the saints and to conquer them. And it will have authority over every tribe and people and tongue and nation. And that all those who are not written in the book of life will worship it. And so this is sort of like this long-term prediction of how this Roman Empire is going to evolve and capture all these different nations.
And the Pope still has immense political power. Almost every world leader goes there and supplicates themselves.
Literally kisses his ring.
Yeah.
And nowadays after Vatican II, it's all sort of trying to be progressive and modest and stuff like that. But you can just go back 150 years, and he's getting carried around on a throne by a bunch of people with this huge hat and ruling over people with his rod and his scepter and stuff like that. He's very imperial.
A lot of non-biblically based precepts and tenets in the Catholic Church that emulate paganism more than maybe what Christ taught, in my opinion. I say that as somebody raised in Catholicism.
Yeah, and then the Protestants have done a good job making the case. The worship of Mary and sort of the idolatry that's all in there, all these non-biblical things. The booklet kind of gets into the details of these symbols, like, for example, the idea of the horns having multiple heads. Each of the 4 beasts is described. Even the concept, the metaphor of having a beast and what it means to be a beast kingdom. Why would it be compared to a beast? It's like the idea of a territorial predator taking up territory, just like a bear or a leopard or whatever. It doesn't want any competition. It pushes out competition. It wants to control the resources in that area. It's actually a really good metaphor for how an empire works, because these empires they don't just randomly go around slaughtering everybody and destroying everything just because they can. Actually, they treat everybody that they conquer as being subjects that work for them. And in a strange sense, they're protecting them and exploiting them. And they use that territory for safe passage, for taxation, for production labor, for religious tribute. And this is the kind of conquest that it's talking about. It's a territorial predator behavior. And once you see it that way, you understand that that's really how the Romans operated, especially. Each of these four successive empires became more sophisticated in how to integrate the people they conquered. Rome famously stole ideas from every place that it conquered and it ruled
Greece,
over.
right? It actually followed the biblical statement of Daniel because they all learned from each other. Who was Greece's great rival? The Persians, right? So Daniel had it played out right because it went from the Persians or the Medes to the Persians to the Greece and to Rome. And Rome everything was based on the Greek history,
Absolutely.
Greek Empire, Alexander.
And each of them innovated, and this is what I found so interesting, what I wrote in the book, is each of them innovated new ways to settle and stabilize this huge, diverse, world-spanning empire. And it all centers around the Mediterranean Sea, which is the great sea that they all rise up out of. The slave trade across the Mediterranean Sea, the massive hordes of gold that was stolen from these foreign lands and centralized and brought into Rome or whatever was ruling at the time, Babylon and things like that. And so these metaphors are actually just so perfect and beautiful in the book of Daniel. And that's what really
prophetic, I guess, is the right word.
Yes, it is literally prophetic. And
it's like a biblical geopolitics that was all predicted. And I mean, all this stuff, like if you even think that Hernan Cortez is just one example, bizarre or something, but the amount of gold they brought back to Spain through the Catholic Church. I think the Holy Roman Emperor was Charles IV at that time, right? I think it's something like that. Like just they inflated all the value. There was so much gold. It was like confetti or something. It was all brought from the New World. It was incredible personal wealth.
And it's like if you start to appreciate the way that the Bible sees empires, that's something I'm still fully appreciating as I'm writing more in my books. But it's like you get away from this theory of the great men of history that are like it's a human-led innovation, and the Caesars are so great, and these people are so great. It's like from the Bible's point of view, these guys are nothing. They're puppets. They're like, of course, they become great, but like the story of Daniel with Nebuchadnezzar, who is the first of these, the golden head and the lion and the symbolism, this first kingdom, you know, he actually gets to a point where he's looking over his vast kingdom and he says, I have done all of this. This is my accomplishment. And God immediately strickens him or plagues him with mental illness. He loses his mind and he runs off into the wilderness and grazes on grass and thinks he's an animal for a couple of weeks until his people find him and bring him back. And then it's only once he admits and confesses that he's nothing and that God is the one who gave him everything. He acknowledges the God of the Jews as being the one responsible for his empire. That's when God allows him to restore his sanity and puts him back in his place. And then from that point on, Nebuchadnezzar actually ends up being a believer in the God of the Jews. And it's this amazing story in Daniel. But that's the logic, is that, and I love that quote. I wonder if I could,
please do.
Here. Offhand, I don't know which one of it might be earlier in Daniel 4 or 5, something like that. Yeah. So Daniel 4, it talks about Nebuchadnezzar himself has a prophetic dream, and it talks about various things, but it says that
It says Daniel 4:3 reads, "How mighty are his signs, how magnificent his wonders. His kingdom is an eternal kingdom. His dominion endures from generation to generation."
If you jump down to verse 28, you have his humiliation, where it says, at the end of 12 months, he was walking on the roof of the royal palace of Babylon, and the king answered and said, "Is not this great Babylon, which I have built by my mighty power as a royal residence and for the glory of my majesty?" And it says, while the words were still in the king's mouth, there fell a voice from heaven, "O King Nebuchadnezzar, to you it is spoken, the kingdom has departed from you, and you shall be driven from among men, and your dwelling place shall be with the beasts of the field, and you shall be made to eat grass like an ox, and 7 periods of time shall pass over you, until you know that the Most High rules the kingdoms of men and gives it to whom he will." Immediately the word was fulfilled against Nebuchadnezzar. He was driven from among men and ate grass like an ox. His body was wet with the dew of heaven, till his hair grew as long as eagle's feathers, and his nails were like birds' claws. And then it says, at the end of the days, I, Nebuchadnezzar, he's writing this himself from first person, lifted my eyes to heaven, and my reason was returned to me, and I blessed the Most High, and I praised and honored him who lives forever, for his dominion is an everlasting dominion. His kingdom endures from generation to generation. All the inhabitants of the earth are counted as nothing, and he does according to his will among the host of heaven and among the inhabitants of the earth, and none can stay his hand or say to him, "What have you done?" It says, at that time my reason returned to me, and for the glory of my kingdom, my majesty and splendor returned to me. My counselors and my lords sought me. I was established in my kingdom, and still more greatness was added to me. And then he says he will go on to extol and honor the King of heaven. And so this quote here about how the kingdom endures, all the inhabitants of the earth are counted as nothing. His will is done, and nobody can stop him from doing anything. This is this is like an ultimate condensation of the biblical worldview. In fact, it is the thing that restores his sanity. When he doesn't believe that, he is insane. It's only once he acknowledges that this is true of all the empires in the world, that is when God restores his sanity, because it is so insane to think otherwise, that a man, when he's walking around saying, "I have done this by my own power," that is insanity. And so that is how inverted our modern education is, our secular understanding is, that there are just these great men who come up and transform the world. And when you see how accurate and how beautifully poetic and appropriate the metaphors are in the book of Daniel, predicting the future, I mean, even the most critical scholars of the Bible who don't believe any of it was divinely inspired, they have to acknowledge that it made predictions that are like really hard to account for, because it's talking about the Roman Empire before the Roman Empire, and like it was written, even the most critical scholars think Daniel might have been written during the time of the Greeks, but not the Romans. And so it has these predictions, but obviously the Bible is like, it's written in the time of Nebuchadnezzar, when Media Persia is just on the rise. And so even the Greeks is a prediction where it has these 4 wings. The leopard with 4 wings is Alexander, who moves like lightning. He's the fastest conqueror in history, like a leopard. And then he has these 4 wings, which are the 4 generals that famously take over once Alexander dies. And then you have this split of the Greek Empire into 4 kingdoms. I mean, it's just this amazing imagery that is so accurate. And so this booklet is kind of like a testament to the biblical way to think about these empires, and then connects it to all the way up to Constantine, and how what the Roman Empire represents, why it's compared to iron instead of gold. I have a diagram in here, a simple diagram that sort of explains that as the kingdoms progress, they become less glorified, less prestigious, and more pragmatic and sort of brutal. Nebuchadnezzar is this sole ruler that is this glorified. People literally worship him in Babylon and stuff like that. He's like this god man who thinks that he rules everything. By the time you get to the Roman Caesars, I get into the logic of the Roman Empire and how it was considered. Actually, it was a constitutional republic, just like America. That's why America sees itself as the successor of Rome. It was a constitutional republic. They had senators, just like we have senators. They had all these representatives, and the Caesar and the emperors were just considered to be peers among these senators. They were not called kings. In fact, Rome famously said, "We will never have a king." And so the even though they're way more powerful, they're way less honored in that sense of being kings who deserve this worship and honor. The Roman emperors have to kind of LARP as being just one of the people. And much like the US president has to just pretend like he's just a citizen that gets elected in a fair election and stuff like that, even though he's wielding nuclear missiles and can, destroy the whole world if he wanted to. This is the Roman innovation, is to disguise the power of the head of state. And so I get into this in here because I find the imagery, again, very interesting. Why it goes from gold to silver to bronze to iron, these decreasing value of metals. But iron is the most practical metal. It is the most, abundant, malleable metal you could use for weaponry and stuff like that. So I just love studying this imagery in these prophecies and seeing how accurate it is. Because it's not that, like I said, even the earliest church theologians all knew that Rome was the fourth beast of Daniel. The part that people have sort of neglected is appreciating the symbolism and how it connects Daniel to Revelation. And Revelation then goes on to explore this history, this evolution of the Roman Empire from being the classic Roman Empire to being this Catholic empire, this spiritual empire, to then being the modern banking, finance, Jesuit-led shadow government sort of system. And in my book, Maybe Everyone is Wrong, which we've discussed here before, that's more where I get into sort of the later evolution and how this beast becomes our modern humanistic sort of neoclassical system, like the American constitutional republic that is founded by these Enlightenment thinkers who don't see themselves as being puppets of the Catholic Church or Romans really, but they're building their capital city, the Capitol buildings in the neoclassical style. They love saying that they're the successors to Rome. You hear Nick Fuentes say we are the extension of the Romans and stuff. There's a lot of accuracy. In fact, it is exactly what the Bible predicts, is that there will
they thought they were upgrading the Roman system. That was the whole thing, is like the separation of powers is supposed to solve problems that the Romans had. This kind of like nepotism and handouts for political power and corruption in the judiciary and things like that. These were all issues that they learned from Roman history and Greeks, the Greeks history that the Romans learned. So this is all historical facts.
And
it's not.
You keep hearing all of these American intellectuals. There's almost like this never-ending cry to save the republic and to bring things back to a more Roman system of this Greco-Roman tradition of the democracy. We need to protect democracy. We need to, save the Constitution and this republic and stuff like that. And in my interpretation of Revelation 13 and this description of the beast, that is essentially what worshiping the beast means. It means that you believe in this system that is righteous, and it just, even in the original Roman Empire, that was what they always said. They were always saying we need to save our republic.
So you worship the state, you rely on the state, you
don't
rely
rely
on
on
the
God.
system. not on God, right?
God is supposed to be what you rely on in any system. If you go into the middle of Muslim territories, you go into the middle of the ocean, no matter what society or civilization you're in, there's one God. He rules everything. All the empires of the world are under his command, and you have nothing to fear. You can completely live in peace in any kind of mixed society. And you will be persecuted, but that's part of the deal too. And you just have faith. And you rely on God. But when you're constantly creating the support system for the beast, you're constantly trying to fix its decaying pillars and put plaster over its holes, and just trying to constantly reinvigorate it with new blood and new ideas, and trying to innovate your way out of the collapse of the beast system. That is the history from the time of Jesus till today, is this beast system that is just oppressing the whole world and destroying the whole world in the name of freedom and democracy and righteousness, in the name of Christ, in the name of everything, in blaspheming.
But constantly. Blaspheming, not doing Christ's work. It makes the context of Christ's statement, give unto Rome that which is Rome's, and give unto God that which is God, because it's really so important, because that simple phraseology, that logical syllogism, wherever you want to put it, is so relevant to each person's life, because they're still battling that today, each and every person. How much obedience should I have to the state? And then you see these warfare and the genocide in the Middle East, and we know now 2 million people died. We don't even know. Like, can you imagine? Like, I don't know Canada, but here we don't get any news about how many people are dying in the trenches in Ukraine. They just leak stuff. 2 million people died in the last 3 years, and it's not even on the social media. Like, how can you be obedient to that as a Christian? So I think your pamphlet and your talk today is so timely. Like, this is it, guys. Who do you have obedience to? And I just can't imagine people keep programming. You got to trust the government or the state or this corrupt system.
I'll make a distinction right there, because even in the original Roman Empire, people hated the government, but they sought to save it by replacing the leadership. And so you'd have the Praetorian Guard killing the emperors, and you'd have, all these schemes and shenanigans and factions that were all conniving and scheming. How do we save our republic? How do we maintain our power? So it's not like they loved their government back then. And today, people also don't see themselves like, soldiers who vow to save the Constitution. They take vows to save the Constitution and the flag. They don't say, I'm going to save the government and the administration. They pledge to serve the Constitution. And so it's this trickery. It's a sleight of hand, where it's actually the same thing, where you are fighting for this ideal that is above everything, where you're supposed to be governed by these rules and this Constitution and these principles. But it's a hoax. It's a sham. America was never any sort of representative of democracy or righteousness or anything like that. It was always this extension of the British Empire, of this weird Atlantean dream of Francis Bacon and all of these things that came before it. And so it's always this project of saving the republic, restoring it. Okay, we agree it's evil, but we can fix it. The Christian literally is supposed to be detached from all loyalty and pledges to anything else on earth other than God, and say, my trust is fully in that. And if America fell tomorrow, that would just be God's will. It is not something for me to be alarmed about. But the project is to give people this false hope that we can turn things around and someday it will be good. And meanwhile, like you said, millions of people are being killed by our weapons. That's not to mention all of the warlords we prop up, and the drug trade, and all of this
human trafficking, like the Romans. Human trafficking is it's more money than drugs. It's happening right under everywhere. It's all over the place now in the US. It's really crazy. Mm-hmm. Like, I keep running into it in places I never would have thought, like my home.
I mean, that's what your podcast does so well, is you investigate, these psychopathic, cults and factions, right?
It's really disturbing. But when you put it all in context, biblical context, it's like, wow, this really is kind of a new Rome. It's bad. Oh. Terry, we're at the 50-minute mark. Thanks so much for coming back. It's great to talk with you again. It's been too long. Where can people find your book? Where can people find your books? Where can people find and reach out to you if they have any additional questions?
I'm currently always writing on my Substack, which is the Winter Christian Substack. So winterchristian.substack.com. That's where I'm publishing a lot of articles dealing with the New Age and modern cults and stuff like that too. My books, you can find links to all of my books on my personal website, which is wolfpox.com. That is my handle that I created for my TikTok account back when I had my TikTok account going off. WOLFPOX, so like Wolfpox. And if you look up my name on Amazon, you'll probably just find my books that way. And that's where I'm selling it on Amazon, Rise of the Beast. It is a short, affordable little booklet. And I would like any feedback from people who end up reading it too. Leave a review and let me know.
Yeah, great. Thanks very much for writing these things. Like, they're accessible too. And, you can, these things help clarify a lot of things that have happened in the past. And I think people should check it out. So it's, again, the title that we talked about today is Rise of the Beast, the Four Kingdoms Explained in 21 Lessons for the Common Believer. And then Terry's Substack is the Winter Christian. So I'll put a link to that in the show notes. His website is wolfpox.com. You can reach him there or on his Substack. And thanks again for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
All right, stay there. I have to turn this off manually on Rumble. Nice. We had 100 live listeners. That's not bad for not a lot of advertising, but I'm going to put this out today. So the video I put up on Patreon, I should put it up on Substack. I think people aren't getting censored on Substack, which is good.
Yeah, I'm finding Substack to be pretty good with any of that.
Are you getting paid by Substack?
Yeah, I've got a decent amount of paying supporters on there.
Oh, nice. Good. You don't feel like Substack's taking too much of your money or anything like that?
No, I think for what they do, the whole idea of the mailing list, sending it right to people's inboxes, I'm very pleased with Substack. I mean, I've heard people complain about it, but it feels kind of like, what, you don't want them to make any profit? Like, you don't want them to, like, they deserve a cut for what they're doing.
For not censoring or not, like, where's it headquartered out of? Is it in the States?
That's a good question. I did look into it at some point. I know I didn't find any red flags when I looked into it. I think it is just in the States. People are really suspicious of it, and that's good too, to, try to watch for any sort of warning signs. But pretty much all of my favorite writers are on there, and I don't hear any of them saying that they're being censored. So it's cool. It can't be that bad.
I should start posting on there. I don't know why I'm slow to that. I guess I've just been burned so many times on frickin' YouTube and Facebook and Instagram. I'm just like,
that is absolutely fair. I mean, I got banned off of TikTok, and I didn't do much on YouTube because I feared that it was going to, I just sort of took it for granted it was going to get banned because I was talking about climate change and things like that they're very defensive about. So, but I've been able to say whatever I want on Substack without any even sense that there is anyone even monitoring what is being said. And I've seen completely far out neo-Nazi things. I've seen, things that are very sort of like the classic canary in the coal mine. Like, if anything is going to get censored, it's going to be this, and it's still allowed on there. So, so far I haven't seen any warning signs there that it's, and yeah, people, the one problem with Substack is that there's actually so much stuff that people want to support that they tend to, I lose subscribers, and then the description people give is, I just can't afford to support this many people on the platform because each one is $5 a month and stuff. So It's like,
so they can't tailor it down to a lesser amount of money. That's interesting. Well, I guess that's a good problem to have. I mean, a bummer that you have that, but I mean, still, you're making money. I'll go.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go subscribe to your Substack right now. Keep in touch. If you ever want to talk to anything, send me an email.
All right, awesome.
It's
Yeah.
been too long, and good luck there in Canada. And if you want to repost this on your Substack, I assume it, but I always restate it verbally. If you want to repost the audio or video, I can send it to you, or you can rip it. It's really up to you. Some people, I totally encourage my guests to repost the stuff, so I don't have like a copyright.
Okay.
And you can repost all my old stuff too. You can repost all those audio and video too if you like. I can send it to you. I like to keep
that.
Yeah, when I'm a guest, I like to repost it and keep it from my archives because it's just more content, makes me more money. But
yeah, it's good publicity, and gives your show support too. So I'm glad that you're growing and that your health is good. And
still at it, man. Still, I'm at almost 1,500 episodes. It's a lot. It's a lot of work. And 5 books, 5 documentaries. I got more books coming out soon, and I'm staying busy, so I'm doing all right.
All right. Yeah, no, I will stay in touch then. Thank you very much for having me on.
Terry, good to talk with you, and I wish you the best. God bless you.
God bless you. Thank you.
Peace.